Interstellar, written and directed by Christopher Nolan, starring Matthew McConaughey, Anne Hathaway, and Michael Caine. This was by far one of my most anticipated movies of the year. I heard about the concept, was awesome. Saw the trailer, was awesome. Saw the movie, and I just don't know. I tried to go into this with as an open mind as possible. I'd seen a few reviews before I went and checked it out, and they were mixed to say the least. Some loved it, some didn't like it so much, some thought it was okay, but not Nolan's best work. I put as much of that out of my mind as possible because I wanted to go into this with none of that influencing my enjoyment of this movie. The basic concept of this movie is that we're now in the future and nothing's going right. All the crops have died, the only crop left is corn. There's these massive dust storms that sort of cover the earth and cover everyone in dust, everything in dust really. The planet can't sustain us anymore, essentially. We've also gone fairly backwards in the way we think. We now think that the moon landing was just propaganda to beat the Russians, that sort of stuff. So the way that the world works now is very, very different to the way it works at the moment. There's no technology left except for vehicles, but even then, there's no gas really left in the world to run them. And really the only occupations out there, well, it seems to be, are people that are farmers or teachers, people that work at schools that produce more farmers. The world Nolan created is one that is very, very bleak. But there is one shining light left, NASA. Well, not NASA. They're like a secret NASA.
Or SNASA.
Yeah, like that. They operate with no one really knowing about what they're doing because the reasoning behind that I felt was actually very, very good because they don't want people to see money being spent on them when it could be spent on just feeding and clothing people, which seem to be the basic necessities of this world that Nolan has created, this version of Earth where everything's going to hell. So Matthew McConaughey plays a farmer. Former engineer, we get a little bit of a backstory for him. Apparently he used to be a pilot for NASA at some point, but now, like everyone else pretty much in the entire world, he is a farmer of corn. But he still has that imagination, that spark. He still believes in things. He still hopes for the future. He wants us to look outside of our own world for solutions to these problems. And that's where the movie starts to progress. And whoever played his daughter when she was really, really young, props to her because she gave a great, great performance. The first part of this movie is really exploring their relationship, the father-daughter relationship. They seem to get along really well, a lot better than him and his son do anyway. And she believes that she has a ghost in her room, something that's moving stuff around, pushing books off shelves and whatever. And through this ghost, he somehow manages to find the coordinates of secret NASA.
Or SNASA.
When he goes there, he discovers that they are planning a mission to go through a wormhole that's been discovered outside of Saturn. This wormhole will take them to another part of the galaxy, or another part of the universe, so that they can find planets that can sustain human life. And that's the basic premise of this movie. Matthew McConaughey, pilot. Spaceship, wormhole, another galaxy, other planets, and hopefully that will save humanity. I'm trying to leave this as spoiler-free as possible. It's very, very hard. I'm pretty sure something that I've already said will give away a fair bit of this movie. I really, really want to talk more about it, but this review is going to be essentially spoiler-free. I may do another review that is just all spoilers at some point because there's a lot of this movie that I want to talk about. This really isn't the place to do it. This is simply a review for people that haven't seen the movie yet. I don't want to give too much away. So the basic premise is set up. Now we get into the movie, the space travel. And this is where the movie truly, truly does shine. The visuals in this are breathtaking. The wormhole looks really, really cool. On the other side of the wormhole is a black hole. And that looks amazing. Apparently Nolan put a lot of work into making this the best representation of a black hole ever put to film. He was working with equations and all this crazy sort of stuff to make it look as real as possible, as real as a black hole could possibly look on film. And my God, did it look amazing. As did the worlds that he created. There's two different worlds that they traveled to, each one drastically different. These worlds that he created, while being fairly simple, are still breathtaking to behold. He put a lot of work into designing these worlds and fleshing them out with great special effects. The other shining light in this movie is, of course, the acting. Matthew McConaughey puts on one hell of a performance. His renaissance is well and truly complete. He is just the actor of the moment. He's putting in amazing performances. He's no longer doing rom-coms, which is the smartest thing that man ever did. He really, really, really does kill it in this movie. Fantastic job. Cannot applaud his performance enough. As I mentioned before, the girl that plays the daughter when she's younger, great actor. She did an absolutely fantastic job in setting up their relationship, father-daughter. Now, the grown-up versions of his kids, once again, put in a pretty solid performance, although Casey Affleck as his son gets a little bit pushed to the wayside, which I feel is a bit of a shame. Anne Hathaway puts in a great performance again. She's becoming another of Nolan's go-tos. Michael Caine, one of his regulars again, puts in a great performance in this movie as well. Now we get to the parts of the movie that didn't quite hit it for me. First of all is the score. I don't know whether it was the cinema that I was in, although it was a very, very good cinema. I don't know what Hans Zimmer was doing when he was creating the score for this, but at some points it felt like it overpowered a lot of the dialogue. We couldn't understand what people were saying, and there was this one pivotal moment where Michael Caine's character was talking, and this scene pretty much changed the entire tone of the movie, and I couldn't hear what he said. Obviously, in context later, I understood what he said, but at the moment of him saying it, the score overpowered his dialogue with another character. And that completely took me out of the movie. And my friend that I went and saw it with, we both looked at each other and said, what did he just say? What did he just say? And how does it change the movie? Neither of us could understand what he just said because the score was too big, too powerful, too loud. I don't know whether it was the mix at the cinema, I don't know whether it was the mix in the movie, but it just was too much. The score was just too loud, it was too brutal, I guess, and it just took you out of it for a moment, and you couldn't understand what people were saying, or you were distracted from the sound to actually take in a lot of the beauty of this picture, because once again, I said the visuals in this movie are top notch. They are amazing. They'll probably walk away with every special effects Oscar going around. However, this movie will not walk away with an Oscar based on the movie itself. It has its flaws, it has its issues, and I feel at times it was a little bit too convenient. And if you watch the movie or you have seen it, you will understand exactly what I mean when I say this is a movie of conveniences. That's the one thing that really, really made me question whether this movie was good or not. If you're not really worried about that sort of stuff, then you will love this movie. Like I said, I don't know whether it was a good movie, but I was glued to the screen for every goddamn second of this movie because it is one of those movies that just sort of captures you and draws you in. Sure, there were parts that sort of took me out of it for a bit, mostly due to the score, but aside from that, I was sucked in. I was looking at the screen the entire time. I was drawn to this movie because visually and based on the actors' performances, you are sucked into this movie, and it's great for those aspects. But there's some parts of this movie that just didn't click for me. But in saying that, I am a Nolan fan, so I will probably want to go to see this again and again and again because I want to understand it. It's a lot like Inception in that you have to watch it a couple of times, I think, to truly understand what he's trying to do here. What Nolan is trying to convey to you, it's not that clear off the bat. But like I said, if you're a Nolan fan, definitely go check it out. If you're a fan of massive space epics, if you're a fan of Gravity, definitely go check this out. And if you're not a fan of any of those things, I don't think you're going to really enjoy this movie. I think this movie is probably going to come across as somewhat preachy and somewhat confusing to someone who isn't a fan of Nolan's previous work, who isn't a fan of big space epics, and people that don't have a grasp on, well, quantum mechanics and a lot of engineering jargon and all that sort of stuff. There was a lot of that in the movie, and it took me a couple of times to sort of think back to what people had said. I'm just like, okay, that needs to make sense with this, and it was sort of very hard to keep track of a lot of the jargon that they used in this movie. But in saying that, they managed to convey it in a way that most people would understand if they sort of were paying real close attention to it. So it wasn't that bad, but like I said, I'm going to have to go back and see this movie probably at least another 2 times. But having said that, those watchings will probably be on Blu-ray. I don't really feel like seeing this movie again in the cinema is going to help anything. I really want to sit down in an environment that I'm comfortable with, say my bedroom or my lounge room, and watch this on a smaller screen so that I can take everything in, hopefully knock the music down a little bit if I can, because that score just popped up in places that it really, really shouldn't have. That was one of my biggest gripes with this movie. Like I said, guys, if you're a fan of Nolan's work, go check it out. If you're not a fan of Nolan's work, say The Prestige and Inception especially, if you weren't a fan of those movies, probably give this one a miss. Other than that, guys, that's it for this review. If you have seen Interstellar, comment below. Tell me what you thought about the movie, because I'm still really not sure. I may do a spoiler review in a couple of days because I really want to talk about everything that was in this movie that I can't talk about right now. Until next time, guys, I'm Ricky. See you then.
I can see my